The BritChips Podcast is proudly sponsored by Silicon Catalyst UK. Hello, I'm Anthony Miller and welcome to the BritChips Podcast, where I have conversations with movers and shakers in the UK semiconductor startup scene. My guest today is Peter Claydon, founder and CEO of Bristol-based semiconductor startup RANsemi. Now, Peter started his career some 40 years ago as an engineer with GEC Marconi Avionics, after we took on similar other roles with other engineering organisations after that. Then, in 2000, he co-founded PicoChip, a company designing radio access network chips. PicoChip grew to a team of well over 100 people in the UK and China before it was acquired. Subsequently, Peter teamed up with the ex-head of PicoChip's design centre in China to co-found PicoCom, which, surprise, surprise, develops radio access network chips, and which had at one stage its own design centre in Bristol. And then, right at the end of 2024, Peter left PicoCom in order to launch RANsemi, which was the sole licensee of PicoCom's IP, along with the right to manufacture the chips independently from PicoCom and sell them everywhere in the world apart from China. Get it? Got it? Good. Peter Claydon, welcome to the BritChips Podcast.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I'm really happy to be here.
Delighted to have you. Look, RANsemi, RANsemi, it does what it says on the tin, radio access network semiconductors. So I wonder if it might be best if you could perhaps start by explaining to our audience who might not be familiar with wireless communications technology, what exactly are radio access networks and what role does RANsemi's chips play in?
Right, so a mobile network really has two parts. There's the core network and the radio access network. Now, the core network deals with routing your calls and routing data to other networks, to the internet, connecting calls. It looks after whether you're authenticated to be on the network, establishing calls, a whole host of things, and security. And that's then connected to the other part of the network, which is the radio access network, which really consists of a lot of base stations, and typical networks will have tens of thousands of base stations. Now, these will be the electronics that sits at the bottom of a mast or upper mast, or in some cases within buildings, antennas that are distributed around. And it's in those base stations that our chips live. And they do the physical layer processing. That's at the very bottom of the layer of the processing stack. And I will say this is the thing that turns bits into radio waves and radio waves back into bits. It's the radio waves back into bits, which is the difficult part, because you've got lots of users coming from, accessing the network at the same time. There are communications channels there. There's interference. There's multi-path propagation. All of that to sort out, and that's what our chips do.
Okay, so if I'm on a mobile phone call, I'm talking to a base station, and somewhere in that base station, in that sort of last part of the link, is the RANsemi chip, which has converted the digital into the radio waves, and it goes off to another base station where there's another RANsemi chip doing the reverse process?
Yes, off to another base station, or typically, you'd be going off to the internet, and you'd be ultimately being connected to a website or something like that. So that's what the core network sorts out, all that routing part of what's connected to what.
Okay, now, most people are familiar. There's some very big names in the wireless communications, mobile communications industry, like your Nokias and your Ericssons, who seem to kind of own most of that space. Where does RANsemi kind of fit into the market?
Well, yes, if you look at the markets overall, yes, there's the biggest players in the world are Ericsson, Nokia, and Huawei, and they have probably at least 85% of the total market in terms of value for mobile networks in the world.
Right.
There's plenty of space for other players there, and indeed, even those big players don't necessarily make all of their own equipment. So there'll be they will be buying from other people as well, which you don't necessarily you don't see, you don't know about. But um, so so we're selling. I mean, Nokia, say, or Ericsson would be a potential customer of ours, except those companies today currently make all their own chips. They're very vertically integrated, so they will
Right.
deal with um, semiconductor companies that will basically make chips, especially for them to their specifications. So everyone else really in the world, they don't have those sorts of resources, so they're looking to buy chips off third parties, like RANsemi, like Qualcomm, for example. There've been
Oh, yeah.
a number of companies in this market, Marvell. All of these make chips that go into radio access networks.
So is RANsemi like the challenger brand in the market now? I mentioned Qualcomm. Everyone, I assume, in our industry would know of Qualcomm.
Yes.
Are you kind of creeping up and planning to overtake?
Well, we're doing a typical startup thing that, there's an incumbent in there. I've got a great respect for Qualcomm. They got great products, but, we saw there were, uh, there's always a tipping point. If you're a new company, you need to get into a market, you need something to change.
Yeah.
And the thing that changed for us, one is transition from 4G to 5G, which meant that companies had to upgrade their equipment. And the other was the advent of what's called Open RAN, which has been an industry-wide movement, which was led by the mobile operators themselves to
Yeah.
try and create more competition. And they have done this by taking what was a base station and splitting it up into different components, some of which can be implemented entirely in software and some of which need hardware, but creating more space in there so that there's room for more companies to get in there and compete.
So it's sort of like a Lego approach, or a sort of plug and
Yes,
play approach to building the network, and there is room then for other players to slot in, like RANsemi.
yes, that's indeed the case, and we've been pretty successful in actually be able to do that and take advantage of that changeover. Um,
Mm. Oh, that's good. Let me just step back a little bit, because I gave in fact, the abridged history of your career, and particularly the chip Pico.com, and it might be worth just explaining to our audience, what is the relationship now between Pico.com and RANsemi, and why did you launch RANsemi when it looks like Pico.com had the IP and was doing, very well at the time.
well, it's a changing world, isn't it? And industry has to adapt all the time to change and take advantage or just mitigate against harm. So I was credited as being one of the co-founders of Pico.com back in 2018. So it was founded in the UK and China.
Ah, okay.
The head company, the HQ's always been in China, and all the money came from China. So back in 2018, there was no problem being a Chinese company selling chips into mobile networks throughout the world. But then, as time went by, things happened. There was geopolitics, and in particular, China fell out of favor for a whole variety of reasons, security concerns, and Huawei has been banned from the UK networks and
Yeah.
to other countries. So it became increasingly difficult. So we thought, in order to have a future for the company, there was a solution to this. One was to set up RANsemi as a completely independent company from Pico.com. So there was no ownership. And it's the Chinese ownership that really has a problem. If you think of TikTok, just I think within the last week or two, TikTok in the United States has been separated off into a separate company with separate ownership.
Yeah.
It's carrying on doing the same thing. So we've done pretty much the same thing with RANsemi. We've set up an independent company and we've licensed the rights from Pico.com to be able to manufacture the products that were developed at Pico.com. And obviously Pico.com is still alive and well and operating in China, but we have rights to sell our chips everywhere else in the world apart from China. And, in return for this, we pay a license fee to Pico.com.
I got it. But you do have a development team in Bristol now, don't you? RANsemi has a development team.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we do. And that's doing two things. I mean, one is, technology is changing all the time. Our chips serve, highly programmable. Our first one has 35 processor cores on it, for
Wow.
examples. And as things change, for example, we're now seeing a lot of 5G and satellites coming along, non-terrestrial networks, NTN, and our chips are applicable for that as well. But that requires development of new software, and it's obviously a different type of hardware that the chips are going into. So that's new development that we are doing within RANsemi. And the second new development we're doing is a new generation of chips. Now, this is something that won't be in the market for several years' time. But the thing that's happening in mobile communications, like everywhere else, is the advent of AI. So we're seeing what was traditionally done as purely a digital signal processing now being merged with AI as well. And this brings lots of advantages.
Such as?
Well, if you think I talked about, the channel between your phone and the base station, there've been interference and multipath and everything. And the job of our chip is to undo all of that, really, and extract the original signal. Now, as engineers, we always think of how you do that. It's a block diagram. It's a box after a box after a box. It's a filter and a Fourier transform and something else. And if you get AI, it can learn how to do this in a way which is combining these functions together. And what's more, AI can learn not just in the general case, but your base station antennas will be in a particular location, and that will be unique to them. And they can basically learn the pattern of how the channel changes within them. For example, people walking on the road go around the corner of a building. They'll be able to preempt that and maybe hand over to a different base station so that your phone just reconnects to another base station at the right point in time. And all of that learning with AI has been shown to actually have benefits in terms of the overall performance of the network.
And call quality, I assume, as well.
Yes, call quality, less drop calls. And the key to the mobile operators is actually getting more capacity out of the system. So instead of, say, a base station providing, a gigabit per second, it might provide 1.5 gigabits per second through using the same amount of spectrum.
Well, that'd be a significant increase in capacity because, of course, mobile phones today, I've not got great knowledge of the technology, but they do, of course, hand over to other base stations as you move. What I think you're saying is that the AI component does this smarter because it can learn from its previous experiences and therefore does a better job of the handover at the right time to the right base station than you could have done that you do now with traditional processing.
Yes, and handing over is one example of a whole load of things that the base station is doing, all of which can be optimized to AI.
So this design work, both the short-term work, which I assume is sort of improvement on, or changes to the code, and also the new design work for this sort of agentic signal processing. Is this done by your design team in Bristol?
Yes, it is. It is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then can Picocom then kind of license that from you, or is that part of the deal, is that the design work, you are in effect designing for them as well?
Well, there's nothing to include it. Our agreement was kind of like more or less a one-off. We're licensing what exists today, and then we're going to develop it. So, I mean, there'd be nothing stopping us with Picocom or any other company, from licensing our technology to them, but there's no actual agreement in place to do that.
So you really can be independent on this. I mean, what you develop is RANsemi's own now, and okay, if there's still an element of Picocom's IP that you're using, then obviously you pay the license fee, I assume.
Yes.
But otherwise, you can do what you like.
Yes, I mean, we pay the license fee on existing products, and all new products we develop are our own. And indeed, and Picocom's off developing its own products now.
Okay.
We obviously have there's a historic relationship.
Sure.
We're friendly, so we will cooperate with each other. But as we develop new products and time goes by, we'll move further and further apart.
Right.
But something else to remember about this sort of product, if you've got a chip that goes into some consumer product which is here today and gone tomorrow, or indeed into your laptop where, every year or so there'll be a new generation with new processors inside. Those chips have a life of, a few, a small number of years.
Small number of years, yeah.
We have customers, had a customer a couple of weeks ago saying, can we guarantee that our chip will still be in production in 2040? Now that's a bit extreme.
What did you say?
Of course.
Of course.
But there's actually, chips in going to 4G base stations today that were developed in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
So effectively, 15 years ago, they'd be under development. They'd have been in the market, 12 or 13 years ago, they've been put into products. Those products are still being made today. There was still, even last year, I think, there were more 4G base stations being deployed than 5G base stations. So these things have an incredibly long life. And the whole process in communications equipment of actually getting type approval, certification, getting it accepted into networks, all of those type of things mean that once it's there and in production, people are loath to actually make changes to it or redesign it.
And is that sort of compliance, is that required country by country? Everywhere that you sell, and anyone sells those chips, have to go through the same process?
Well, fortunately, we've had standardization. So, there are two main type approval regimes. There's CE and FCC. So CE comes out of the European Union, but in fact, other large parts of the world really accept that as their primary certification. Then there are other parts of the world where the US FCC type approval dominates. And there are other places which basically, in some cases, it's just a paper exercise. If you comply with CE, you've got to be certified for our country, but you're really just submitting what you've done for CE to their country to just make sure that it's been it's approved by them as well. So
what is your biggest country market or regional market today then, Peter?
Yes, you've got to, obviously there are kind of two answers to that in a way. They're where things are made, which would be where our direct customers are, and then where the end customers are. In terms of our direct customers, Korea is our biggest market.
Really?
We have 6 or 7 customers in Korea. And Korea is quite a big place for making, for making all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Making electronics and equipment for mobile networks. So we've been successful there. We have customers in Japan. And then in Taiwan, because, again, there are lots of companies in Taiwan that make equipment. But that's not being deployed in Taiwan. They're being made for customers in the US and Europe and in India. And in fact, India is our biggest growing market at the moment.
Okay. And not Europe, not the UK.
Well, we have a UK customer called Antevia Networks,
Right?
And they are deploying private networks. They're a particularly interesting, innovative company, in fact. So they manufacture in Taiwan. So it's to where how products and money flows. We're selling to their ODM, their manufacturer in Taiwan, who are selling to them. But it's Antevia as our direct relationship with.
Are private networks a thing now? Is this a growing part of the market?
It is. Now, private networks existed in 4G and other times in the past as well. But the thing that's really changed in the 5G era, shall we say, is spectrum availability. So the US had this spectrum band from 3.5 to 3.7 gigahertz called CBRS. It's quite complicated regulations, but in essence, anyone can put up a base station there and radiate. There's an automatic process whereby it applies to a geographic database to check that it's okay to transmit there. And in the UK, we have a local license band, shared access band, which goes from 3.8 gigahertz to 4.2 gigahertz. And you can buy a bit of spectrum there if you want to be able to put up a base station that has a 50-meter radius. You can do that for as little as £80 per year.
What sort of organisations then would be wanting to build private networks like that?
So there are, I mean, I was initially going back a few years. I thought, well, this doesn't make sense, but it does. So you say you could use a mobile network, but say you've got a factory, or a warehouse, or an office building, particularly those like that. It makes sense to communicate wirelessly, and people use Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi has a number of limitations. One is the number of access points you need. The second, although Wi-Fi is improving all the time, the who has access to what isn't scheduled in the same way as it is with 5G. So 5G can guarantee individual users certain qualities of service. So it's far more robust and reliable in those senses. And it's been shown to be no more expensive than Wi-Fi to deploy, in fact, potentially cheaper. And of course, I guess one of the things is within there is this spectrum. Although anyone can get a license to the spectrum, you have to apply in the UK to Ofcom, the regulator.
Yeah.
So you have to get a license from Ofcom to be able to do this. And that means that other people are forbidden from interfering with you in the same location.
And do you see this as a sort of an opportunity area for RANsemi then?
Yes, it is. It's RANsemi. Now I've forgotten the details, but the private network market is really growing. So it is an opportunity. And the other thing about where we are with RANsemi, our chips predominantly go into what are called small cell base stations. So large cells, macro cells are things, big boxes of electronics. If you wander around the streets in the UK, you'll see these poles with antennas at the top around suburban streets, and at the bottom there'll be some cabinets sitting there, quite large, full of electronics. So we're predominantly going to small cells, which are the sort of things that they can be outdoors, giving deployments in within a few hundred meters, or they're indoors. So a tall building might have base stations on every floor, essentially.
I mean, what sort of size, roughly, or are we talking about here?
Sure.
Here's what I prepared earlier. Oh gosh,
this is a very old one. This is it says Ubiquitous on it. So some people might remember the company Ubiquitous. It was a UK company. This is a 3G small cell, so it's a tiny little thing.
It's like modem size, yeah.
Yes, modem size. They're normally a bit bigger than that. So think of your sort of home router. In your home, broadband comes in. They're that sort of size. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's just come back a little bit more on the business side of things. How have you funded? Was a business originally funded, say, through Picocom, and now you're on your own, or how are you sort of generating now revenue, cash, all the things you need to stay there till 2040 and beyond?
Well, actually, Picocom was a classic, China VC funded company. In fact, we raised over A and B rounds over $100 million.
As Picocom.
As Picocom in China. So, you need, when you think of a chip like this, that's on a TSMC 12 nanometer process. So you're talking about,
big bucks.
several million dollars just to create the mask set for the chip to make it. And that's just tooling before you can make one. You're talking about, 5 million plus in license fees to license the IP that go into it from companies, say like ARM and so on. You're talking about, probably a few $1 million for the EDA tools to design it. And then you've got a design team of, tens of engineers working for 2 or 3 years. You put all that together, and I've seen actually ridiculous numbers for how long people say, "Oh, it now costs like $400 million to design a chip." It depends what you're designing. It's tens of millions for any reasonable size digital chip. So that's what we did as Picocom. Now, as RANsemi, we've inherited these effectively. We just pay a license fee to have access to make them. So we obviously had a kickstart from Petercom. There's no Petercom equity in it, but it's entirely owned by its founders currently, RANsemi, and we've been funding it from our sales revenue.
Oh, that's fantastic. Bootstrapping, basically.
Yes, we've had a relatively small grant from the UK government for a specific project, which is obviously very welcome. That's from our AI-based future-looking things.
Okay, so that's what you're doing. That project is undergoing now, and that's your future stuff. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yes, no, so that's good. But we are looking for sources of funding. The overall mobile networks market has been declining over the last couple of years, and that's for various reasons. One is, in the early days of 5G, the mobile operators went and they built out their big 5G networks, and then they kind of stopped. One reason for that is going from 2G or 3G or 3G to 4G, there were significant differences. They wanted to build out the whole network quickly. Whereas 4G and 5G, most of us using our phones won't notice any difference. So there's not much difference from the consumer. If there's fairly good 4G coverage everywhere, you're only going to need to add 5G coverage as people need more data, or there are more people, or there are more uses.
Yeah, or lower latency as well, assume. I think that's what you're...
There is lower latency as well, but for what we're doing, just as kind of using our phone, that's 4G latencies are
good
40,
enough.
40 milliseconds, say, and 5G brings that down. So, but that's now forecast to change, because everything's caught up, and we're going to see markets expanding. But what this has meant, a lot of investors they want to invest in new stuff. You can see. And they haven't seen this as something to invest in. So we have got a number of investors lined up. Hopefully within these things always take longer than you expect, but within the next few months, you can probably expect to see something about something that we've achieved as RANsemi, which is meant we get an injection of capital.
Are you able to give an idea of how much capital you're hoping to get?
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing is that we're transitioning from a startup company to a mature company, and when you mature, you're generating money from your sales. So we forecast, and these things change, that based on our current business plan, we need $20 million over the next couple of years, which will get us to our new generation of chip and everything. But we're spending far more than that because
you're generating the cash yourself from the business. Are you getting a good response from your potential backers? I mean, 20 million is not pin money now, is it? It's serious dosh. I mean, if it's in the US, it'll fall out of their wallets. But over for a British company, it's serious dosh. Are you getting the reception you hope for?
Well, yes, it's one of those things. If in a form, does it meet your expectations? So yes, we are getting the reception I was expecting, shall we say, which was not very good. So we're looking at more creative ways. We're looking at more creative ways, and in fact, we're very actively engaged in some more creative processes.
That sounds very intriguing. You're not going to go rob a bank or anything, are you?
No, not quite. Not quite.
Although they deserve it. Oh, I didn't say that.
Yeah. No, we're looking at just generally speaking, involving more collaborative efforts with other companies. So, yes,
that makes sense, because your chips go in somebody else's base stations or whatever, and there is it would make sense to have some sort of partnership arrangement, sort of co-development, and that would be and that of course ties everybody into each other anyway, doesn't it? Everyone's got skin in the game and in your success. I think that's an eminently sensible move. Plus, whatever you can raise in, I guess VC style money, alongside, gets you to where you need to be. Is this like will be part of the growth plan, or by getting some of the money is there some sort of quantum leap? Probably wrong term. Some giant leap you can make, like you can now hire more developers, or you can now design a new style of chip and pay TSMC whatever money they need to produce it.
Yes. So, I mean, I think one of the things is that I said these chips have lifetimes of, 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's not like some products, if you want to get into the latest phone or the latest laptop or something, if your chip's not available at exactly the right time when Apple or Samsung's doing the next generation, then you've missed it.
You've missed it. Yeah.
By the time it gets to the generation after that, your chip will be too old. There are in infrastructure, it's a lot slower, and people take years to develop things, which is frustrating for us. Between our engagement with the customer and the customer starting to ship any product can be 2 to 3 years at least.
Can you see that changing at all? Can you see any developments in that sort of wider wireless communications market, which could significantly cut down that development time from your customer's point of view, so that you can basically shift more chips?
That's a very good question, actually. I'm, the whole industry moves in this whole cadence. It's kind of been every 10 years there's a new G. 1G was the 80s, 2G was the 90s, and you get to 5G is the 2020s, and the 2030s is 6G. We're getting less and less benefit from going to a new G. And some people are thinking, well, 6G, in a way people thought what was 5G. It's actually, there's lots of clever stuff in 5G, but it could have gone into 4G as well. And in 6G as well, there will be a 6G, and there'll be new features. There'll be new spectrum, which gives that wasn't there before. There'll be new clever ways of using multiple antennas. There's I think we'll obviously start seeing, already in 5G, satellite communications being a part of what's provided. But these things happen in this kind of cadence. Yeah. That's not. It's a long-term thing, and I've already said that our existing chips are perfectly suitable for use in satellite communication. I mean that for low Earth orbit satellites. I mean, there's the radiation problem that you get from chips, but low Earth orbit, as it turns out, that modern FinFET silicon processes are far more immune to radiation anyway.
Oh.
And if you're in low Earth orbit, there's not so much, and you can you can use redundancy there to mitigate against the effect of radiation.
Is this an opportunity market for RANsemi then, the satellite?
Oh yes, very much so, very much so. In fact, we've been very much involved in that. The people at management, Vicky Messer, has been very much involved in a process with an organisation called the Small Cell Forum, which looking at the synergies between the sort of small cell base stations that we do, they go predominantly indoors, and satellites. And funny enough, you think that they're opposite ends of the spectrum, but no, they're low power is one big thing, which is very important. So we have low power solutions, which you require for a lot of things we do, because they're in small boxes, and you don't want to have lots of heat to have to dissipate. In satellites, there's very difficult to get rid of heat. So, and indeed to get the electricity in the first place to power them. So there's lots of synergies there. But that's just an example of, you can develop a chip, and if you think about the development of it, you kind of make it future proof.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I think our companies like us, that's where our core value is. We need to be able to know how to design chips. We need to know how to make chips. Predominantly, we need the contacts with the market, the customers, and to be engaged with the standardization processes to look at where things are going in the future. So we're not just producing something that only deals with today's problems, but has the flexibility to be adapted as the standards change. But that's all part of the organization how things work, because the standards bodies aren't going to change things in such a dramatic way very frequently to obsolete old technology all the time.
Yeah, because this is quite different to some other parts of the tech and deep tech sector where it seems to be, changing over like that. And if you haven't designed the next chip in 6 months' time, you're out of the market. As you say,
Yes.
because of the cadence of it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? It's the nature of the industry. And I'm struggling to think of a major disruptive influence that would change that 10-year cycle to a 5-year, 2-year cycle. Or maybe I just can't think big enough.
Well, where's the innovation? I mean,
Yeah.
in some ways, it was the mobile phone. There was 1G,
Yeah.
that was the innovation, but
Yeah.
2G, which went from analog to digital, and there was some data, but the way we started using phones for SMS, for example, that was, I'd say that was the major tipping point. Everything else after that I would say, has been somewhat incremental.
So it's that switch to data, in effect, from voice to data. And then, because I was surprised a little when you said that the mobile market was in fact currently contracting, because it sounds like everything wants to talk to everything else, and they want to do it faster and with more data, and with all this imaging stuff and robotics and AI. I would have thought that the opportunity was almost endless, but maybe the industry doesn't move that fast.
Well, actually, you can just kind of do a thought experiment about this. There's a guy called William Webb, who's very well known in the industry, in the UK and in fact internationally. He's written some books on this subject, and you can observe it. What do we use phones for, and what consumes most data? And 80% of the data on mobile networks, and I think fixed networks, is video.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, most of us can only watch one video at a time, and there's a limit to how much video we're watching. So, and that becomes saturated. And all of these other applications you can think of, they add their extra things, but none of them consume anywhere near as much data as video. So mobile network, the traffic growth on mobile networks going around the sort of, I think the 2012 to 2015, 16, 17, there was growth of 50% per year growth on mobile networks.
Wow.
Huge growth. That's down to less than 10% now. And you can argue about figures. It certainly could be less than 5% in some places. And in fact, people are getting better at compressing video.
Yeah.
Same videos using less bandwidth. So, so generally speaking, no matter how people get excited about AI agents. They're going to be communicating all the time. But they don't actually communicate huge amount of data, generally speaking. One of the things about AI is reducing the amount of information you need to communicate.
Well, that's a very good point, because I was talking to and have spoken to a number of semiconductor startups who are trying to do those accelerators, particularly the video imaging ones, doing the compression and trying to, basically pump higher quality video down a smaller pipe, basically doing it faster. So I can see the point there. Let me draw the podcast to a close and ask you a question which kind of ties back to the early point you made, that you got asked by a client, are you still going to be is the equipment still going to be here, are you going to be here RANsemi in 2040? But tell me, Peter, do you think you'll still be with RANsemi in 2040?
I might be. I mean, I'll be I may well have retired. Yes, I'll be quite old if I am.
but this is now kind of your life's work through to retirement, I guess, is where I was leading to on that.
I hope so, to be quite honest. I mean, our team has put so much effort into this. Going back, yes, we soon be 8 years going back since founding Petercom, and you get terribly invested, and you really want to see it be successful. And I find the thing that's really satisfying is you develop a product and you work with a customer, they develop their product, they get it into production, and they sell it, and it's being deployed, and everyone's making money, but you have that satisfaction of all that effort you've put in, showing its results. So, I mean, that was one of the things that really drove RANsemi, because when it became apparent that, Petercom, its market outside China was limited, one option for Petercom was to say, we'll just focus on China.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and from their point of view, but our team in the UK, really felt we wanted to, we wanted to see the results of this success. We wanted that to be global, which is really what drove the actually quite difficult process of going through, setting up a new company and licensing the right to the IP, and then, actually getting the money to be able to take it forward.
Well, you've done that, and you're the beating heart of that business now. I hope you've got some succession planning in place. I don't expect you to pop your clogs anytime soon, but as you say, you're nearer the. I mean, I'm at the end of my career. You're nearer the end of your career than the beginning, and it is just so important. I've had this discussion, not so much with the younger founders, but with some of them as well, that they have to think about who's going to take over the leadership, particularly when so much hinges around the man or woman at the top. Is this something that kind of plays on your mind at all?
I don't think anyone's indispensable. If you look at typically VC funded companies, I mean, one of the things about investors is you think they may be in control. They're not really. They're giving you the money, and the only thing the only lever they can mainly pull is changing the CEO. So hence you find companies change CEOs whenever things don't seem to be going as planned. They'll change the CEO, and the CEO is actually one of the most replaceable people. Yes, I mean, certainly that's replacing from outside an organisation, but certainly yes, succession planning is something that I think there's always someone there who can take over. I always think organisations are remarkably resilient to people, to people leaving. None of us is indispensable.
No, that's a good way to think of everyone of your own position. But it sounds like you're going to be in place for quite a time yet. It's been a fascinating voyage of discovery for me, to be quite honest, because I've been totally unfamiliar with wireless communications, other than as a consumer. I'd certainly like us to keep in touch, and particularly when you have those major milestones like the next funding round and other major achievements, let us know, because we always like to do BritChips Podcast news flashes. But for now, Peter Claydon, founder and CEO of RANsemi, thank you very much for joining me on the BritChips Podcast.
And thank you very much, Anthony. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I've really enjoyed it.
Lovely. Thank you very much.